Good evening, everyone.
Kavod, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Okay. So we're going to Yud Bet. It says here, so what does that mean? Before he breaks the bread to eat it, first he has to dry his hands well. Make sure his hands are dry. Because says Rabbi Abu, whoever eats without drying his hands, it's like considered like he's eating impure meat. As it says in Yechezkel, Kacha yochelu b'nei Yisrael et lachmam tameh. Perek Kama de Sotah, it's in the first perek of Sotah, the Beit Yosef says. Rashi explains, Kacha yochelu b'nei Yisrael et lachmam. That's how the children of Israel will eat their bread, tameh, right, impure. Alma davar mi'uz kare tumah. So you see from there, something disgusting is called tumah. Oh, adkan, right? So in other words, he's trying to tell you that when you bless on the bread and your hands are still wet, it's disgusting. And that's also called tumah. It's called impurity. Rabbeinu mefaresh lachmam tameh begematria. It says the numerical value of these words, belon niguv yadayim, without drying your hands, comes out the same. V'chen katuv b'safek Shulchan Aruch, b'sefer Shulchan Aruch. Also it's written in this book also, the same thing. Okay, all kinds of gematria, very nice. So what do we see from all this? That you got to dry your hands before you touch the bread. So let's go to Shulchan Aruch, see what it says there. So it says here, first you got to dry them before you touch the bread, as you break the bread, before you break the bread. If he eats like that with wet hands, it's like, it's considered like he's eating impure bread. So again, as we said, right, the idea is that it's disgusting like that to eat. Okay, good. So that's why you gotta have a nice towel over there, right? The next to your washing station, So make sure you dry your hands, right? You don't walk around with your hands dripping all over the place. Okay, that's the story. Let's go to the next one. You Gimel. Yeah, this is an interesting one. Let's see what it says here.
I do have a question. I
Sure.
have seen people washing their hands and not dry them. Is it an Ashkenazim costume or everybody?
No, I just think that they don't know what they're doing. They have to learn halakha a little bit better.
So you have to dry even in the morning for prayers.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, now here we're talking about because you're touching the bread when your hands are wet.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean? So it's not really related to that so much.
I see.
Uh, but but of course, when you're waking up in the morning and you're washing your hands, also you have to dry the hands. Because that water is impure. So you don't want to have that water, on your hands. That's for sure.
Thank you.
But if you're just washing your hands, let's say, for some other purpose, so then it's not really so important. But I'll tell you something, it is known that, not drying your skin, when it's wet is not good for the skin also. In terms of the health, it's not good.
Yes, especially the hair. If you wash your hair.
Right, the head also, the head, the face, the face is not good to have water on the face without drying it. So yeah, so it's not a good way it's not good hygiene, you should you should dry your hands, for also for the sake of hygiene as well. Good advice. Okay, whatever. But here, we're talking about something which is more like halakha, so it's a little bit different. Also in the morning, it's halakha, really. You have to watch out for that. Okay, so that's the story there. So he brings over here in the Bit Yosef, Katab Mordechai, says the Mordechai, the Perek Elu Dvarim, right? In this Perek, the Samag, the Tanya, the Perek Shenid Yadayim. It says in the second Perek of Yadayim, right, which is a Tosefta, Halach Aleph, Shamatbil Yadav Enot Tzarich Lenagev Yadav. Right, so interesting, right? He says that if you're immersing your hands in a mikvah, and that's how you're purifying your hands. So then you don't need to dry the hands. That's what it says there. So he says, he comments on this Bit Yosef. So he says the reason is because there's no impure water there. The mikvah is all pure. מטעם זה נראה דהו הדין לשופך על שתי ידיו רביעית בבת אחד שאינו צריך ניגוב כיוון שלא נטמעו המים כלל. So he says also if you have like a situation where you pour on your two hands one revi'it, right, of in one shot, you also don't need to dry your hands there. Why is that? Because the water has not become impure at all. Like it says the Torah in this chapter 162, but if he washed each hand by itself, so what you have to do is spill a revi'it on each hand in one shot. Which Why? So there should be no impure water. But then you shouldn't need to dry it. Wow, interesting. Okay, this is the last halacha in this chapter. So let's see the Shulchan Aruch, and if we need, we'll come back to this, to understand it better if we have to. Let's see what it says in the Shulchan Aruch here. So it says, "Hamatbil yadav yachol lechol belo niguv." Right. So it says if you immerse your hands, right? What does that mean in the mikveh, right? So it says you can eat without drying your hands. Also, if you wash your hands in one shot. So what does that mean? You pour like a revi'it of water in one shot over both hands. Or shenatal yado echad. Let's say he washed one hand, and he poured revi'it on it. And also he put revi'it also on the other side, on the other hand. So, okay, that's what it says in the Shulchan Aruch. But the truth is, right, that apparently there is some contradiction here between the former halacha and this one. It doesn't seem to fit in very well together. And I'll tell you why. Because in the halacha that we said before, we said that the fact that your hands are wet, it's like disgusting to touch it with a bread. Here, we're saying that it's not the water, it's the impurity. So if that's the case, I guess we have to update this halakha, and reimagine this whole thing, What does that mean? That it's really disgusting when the water is impure. But when the water is not impure, apparently it's not disgusting. That's I guess we have to say it that way. There's no other way to explain it. Let's see Mishnah Berurah, what he says here. Just interesting. Let's see what it says. Okay, very interesting, this Mishnah Berurah. Let me explain to you what it's saying here. It's saying a couple of things, a couple of interesting things, First of all, he's explaining that why did we just say that when you pour a revi'it of water on both hands or one hand at a time, you don't need to dry? So he explains this, more vividly so you can understand better. So he's saying the reason is because when you pour revi'it, the water does not become impure because it's large enough, the water, to deflect the impurity, so it doesn't become impure. And that's the reason why the Bet Yosef, Shulchan Aruch, they said that in a scenario like that, you don't need to dry your hands at all because the water is not impure. That's one thing. Then he brings another thing, which is also something also that I noticed myself, as I just told you guys, that in the former halacha we said that the problem was because it's wet. Now it seems to be saying the problem is because if it's impure or not pure, or pure, yes, pure. So therefore, he says the Mishnah Berurah that the Rashal, the Marshal, argues with the Shulchan Aruch, doesn't agree with it. So what does that mean? He says that you have to dry your hands anyway, because it's not the impurity, it's the fact that it's wet. That's really the problem. And that's the way we said in the halakha that we just read before. Very strong point, right? So anyway, right, there's a machloket here, all kinds of stuff, interesting. Um, so what should we do, right? Practically speaking, how should we do it? And also, the Mishnah Berurah points out another thing that he says most of the authorities agree with the Marshal. Okay, interesting. So what should we do, right? Bottom line, how should we handle this? So I guess we would have to say we're gonna go like the Shulchan Aruch, and that means that if you used for each hand a revi'it of water, which we said right already, it's 3 ounces, you don't really need to dry your hands anymore. That's one thing. The other thing is that we said if you're dipping your hands into the mikveh, same thing, right? Since there's no impurity with that water, you don't need to dry your hands. Right? So, that's halakha, according to Shulchan Aruch, right? Bottom line. But at the same time, right, we do have the other opinion as well, and I guess it's a good idea to be stringent here, not from the side of halakha, but from the side of hygiene, whatever. Just common sense, right? You should always try to dry your hands before you eat the bread. It's a matter of good advice. Good hygiene. It's the proper thing to do. But a person can get away with it. If according to what we said, if you have these conditions that we mentioned, if you did also you don't have to dry your hands. If you really want to just leave them like that and eat, whatever, right? Enjoy your food. Right? So bon appetit, right? Do what you want to do. We got no problem with that. Okay, it's good to know. I guess the practical difference would be, let's say you don't have like a towel, like you wash your hands, right? You don't have a towel, so you don't really have something to dry your hands on. So if you don't have anything to dry your hands, you could write the bless on the bread as is. If you follow the conditions that we mentioned, right, which is you pour the revi'it on each hand, or right, something like that, right? And usually we do that, by the way. We do put a revi'it on each hand because we're using a lot of water. Our cups are like large. Like my washing cup is like at least 20 ounces. Which is like almost like a liter. Like 2/3 of a liter. It's a lot of water. So we are using a revi'it. So according to that, we wouldn't have to really dry our hands. But anyway, right, as I said, the proper hygiene, proper conduct, is to dry your hands anyway. Unless you have no choice. Something like that. But we paskin like the Shulchan Aruch, I mean, the halacha is like the Shulchan Aruch, bottom line. Okay, very good. It's interesting, very interesting. So here the Mishnah Berurah really helps us, right, to understand this halacha. It does a good job here. Okay, beautiful. So I think that's the end of the chapter. We can go to the next one, Yudalid. I'm sorry, Kuf Nun Tet. I'm sorry. Kuf Nun Tet. Yeah, we're done with this. All right, let's move on. Okay. So it says the tour over here, right? So very important halacha, right? When you wash your hands for this purpose, for the meal, you need to have a kli, right? You cannot just wash straight from the sink. So, you got to have your right washing cup, right? Whatever. By the way, if you don't have a cup, let's say, to wash, you can use also like a bottle, same thing, right? You can use one of those bottles, whatever you may have on hand. It's all good. So it says, Pashut b'per kol basar, right? Where is this written? It says Bet Yosef, Kuv Zayin Amud Aleph, right? In Chulin. וכבדיתו אמנה אמלא אין, וכתב שם רשב"א, says רשב"א there, בשם הלכות גדולות, name הלכות גדולות, תהא דכבדינן אמנה, דסמכו הרבנן על מי חטאת. Why are we stringent to have a utensil? Because he says they compared it, the rabbis, to juxtapose it to the purification waters. Al kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, or regarding the purification of the hands and feet of the Kohanim in the Bet HaMikdash, right? The Mikdash, right? Okay, there you go. So that's the story there. Okay. So then says the Tur, אבל כל הכלים כשרים אחד כלי אבנים וכלי גללים וכלי אדמה. So he says all the utensils are good for this, whether it's made out of stone or dung, right, or clay, right, whatever, right, okay, earthenware, things like this. Okay, so says the that's a strange thing, by the way. In those days they used to have utensils made out of dung, which is like disgusting for us. We wouldn't use something like that, but apparently they have things like this. It's hard to imagine they were using things like that. Anyway, it is what it is. So it says, right, Mishnah Perek Rishon de Masechet Yadayim. It's the first Mishnah in the first parak of Yadayim. Mishnah Bet, right? Uperesh Rabbeinu Shimshon. So says Rabbeinu Shimshon, B'chol HaKelim, ben shel etz, ben shel etzem, ben shel zechuchit. So it doesn't matter, right, whether the utensil is wood or bone, right, or glass. Even as we said, right, dung. Even though these things are not considered to be, right, the dung, a kli, a utensil for the purposes of impurity. But also, it has to hold at least a revi'it, right? So it shouldn't be smaller than 3 ounces, right? This kli that you're washing from. At least 3 ounces or more, right? Of course, yeah. 3 ounces is the minimum. So in other words, if you have like a shot glass, right, for your vodka, your whiskey, right, whatever, you shouldn't use that for washing hands. It's too small. But a wine glass will be okay, because it's like, 5 ounces, 7 ounces, 8 ounces, it's fine. Okay. You should know, by the way, that there is also machloket amongst the poskim, whether you're allowed to use disposable, cups for washing hands. There are some poskim who don't allow this because they say it's not really called a kli, because you're throwing it away. It's like disposable, but the majority of the poskim, they do allow it. So therefore, you can be lenient with that and wash with a disposable, cup or disposable bottle, right? It's all the same. Yeah, you can use those things. Not really a problem at all. But if you want to be stringent, and not use that, so then use, something more solid, right? Something more permanent. That's a good idea. But if you only have paper, right? You go, or let's say, something like that, right? That's fine. You can use paper. You can use plastic cups or styrofoam, right? Right, those coffee cups, you can use those too. There's also a question with those cups if you can use them for kiddush, to make kiddush with them, these disposables. And they're also, we're lenient with that, but the truth is, right, that the more proper way is to make kiddush, with something more, with more something more prominent, right? Not something so flimsy like a disposable cup, you don't want that lechatchila. So that's why, the custom is to use, for kiddush cups, like they use, silver or right, or like silver plated, things like this, right? A little bit more fancy, you know. I personally like to use crystal, by the way, that's my thing. I like crystal better. Okay, because I don't like the the taste that the metal gives, to drinks. I'm not, I don't like metal cups. It's not my thing.
Just no Dixie cup, huh?
Yeah, so we talked about that. I don't know if you came in right at that time. We
Sorry.
talked about this. We talked about disposables, right?
So they are okay or they aren't?
The disposables, it's a machloket there, but the halacha is you can use them, but it's better to use something more solid, if you have something better, it's better, definitely better, but if you got nothing else, you got your, plastic or styrofoam, you can use those things, paper, whatever. It's okay. Okay, very good. So, right, for washing hands, right, we're even more lenient, than other things. Okay, so let's go on. As we said, it should also hold the Revi'it, right? At least 3 ounces, right? It shouldn't be smaller than that. No shot glasses. Prepare kol habasar, right? Where is this? And also in Chulin, Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph, Kli she'eno machazik Revi'it, eno trim mimenu yadayim. It says over there, right? If it doesn't hold the Revi'it, we don't wash hands with that.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So are the Natilat Yadayim cup, are they they don't have holiness, right?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Do they have holiness?
Oh, no, they are totally mundane.
Okay.
They are as mundane as you can get.
Because we have one at the school, and we were doing like testing like plating for bacteria, just like as an experiment. And
Okay.
like one of the girls wanted to swab the Natilat Yadayim cup and the things that it grew. So I've been using like a Lysol on it, and I just want to make sure I'm not desecrating it.
By spraying it with Lysol?
Yeah.
No, that's a good thing actually.
Okay.
Gets rid of the bad smell. Yeah, it's good. But the truth is, these cups have no sanctity, of course. Just the opposite, right? They're considered to be very, in other words, they're not the cleanest things in the world. Like let's put it this way. Um, that's why they say, that when it comes to like Kohanim, usually we give them to do everything first. They go first for everything. But when it comes to washing hands, we don't tell them to do it first. You know why? Because it's not considered to be like something honorable to wash your hands, first. So we don't give them that. It's not considered something significant. So you see from there, right? Washing your hands is not a holy thing, whatever. I mean, the mitzvah is holy, but I'm saying, the utensils that you use are not holy. That's what I'm trying to say. Just the opposite, actually. Okay, so yeah, that's the story there. So goes on here. So says the Torah, Im nikab bekones mashke, right? So, right. So what about if it developed a hole, right? The cup. Is it still kosher? Right. So rule is like this, says the Torah, if the hole is big enough, that it can bring in, right, water inside the cup from the outside, it's already not kosher for washing hands. If it's that big, Because here's the thing, right? That there's two types of holes, in terms of the size. There's the hole that gives off water, right? Lets the water out. So that's like it can be even smaller, and it'll do that. But in order to bring it into the cup, it's gonna have to be a little bit bigger, because of the gravity, whatever, right? All kinds of pressure, right? So that's why it needs to be a little bit bigger. So if it's that big that it brings in water, right, then it's already too big. Okay, so then it says, right, im nikav bekones mashke. We said that already. We said, and it says Gemara right there. What does it say? Amar Rabba klisha nikav bekones mashke eno trim im le'adayim. As we said, right, if it already brings in water, we don't wash with that. Katav Samag says the Samag. Da'afilu bikli shetef haya noheg Rabbeinu Yitzchak ken. So he says that Rabbeinu Yitzchak, right, who is the Ri? That's the Ri. The famous Ri. He says, right, that even with utensil, right, of shetef, right, he was accustomed to do like that. Even though he says it's not really mentioned, right, this size, in the laws of in the Gemara Shabbat, Tzadik Kemud Bet, ela bekli cheres. It's only mentioned regarding earthenware, right? Clay. וכן כתבו התוספות, that's what's in תוספות, פרק ב' בסימן. דף אגב, the שיעור דכונס משקה לא יטמע. Right, so in other words, I think that when you use this word shetef, I didn't know how to translate that. But now I remember, if I'm not mistaken, kli shetef means a metal kli, metal utensil. That's what they call it, shetef. What does the word shetef mean, by the way? Anybody know? So the word shetef is like when we say shtifa, shetifa. So that means like pouring water, like rinsing with water, shetef. To rinse, pour, to flow of water, So why do they call now here's the $1 million question. Why do they call a metal utensil kli shetef? Why does that define metal? The concept of rinsing,
Was that like the standard to use metal for pouring water?
No, that's not the thing. Okay, I'll give you one more guess. Okay, I'll tell you, right? It's a little hard to, I'm giving you a hard question. I like to give hard ones, I'm a tough teacher. I can't tell you. So anyway, right? The point is like this. I just remembered, as we read it, it came back to me. It was like several years ago. We, I got into this whole thing when I learned Masechet Zvachim, which talks about sacrifices. So over there, it talks about this thing, So shetef, it's called because these utensils, right, metal, they have purity in a mikveh. You can rinse them in the mikveh, that's why it's called shetef. As opposed to earthenware, which you cannot purify, right, like that. That's why it's called shetef. Okay, whatever, it's all good. Anyway, so he's telling you, right, that really in the Talmud it was mentioned. This rule was mentioned regarding, clay utensils, but the Ri says it also applies to metal as well. Okay, good. It should. I mean, you would think it's the same thing. What difference does it make, right? Okay, so תפק גב לשיעור כונס משקה לא יתמר אלא אדם בצניעה אלא גם בכלי חרס כיוון דחי אמר רבא הכלי שניקב בכונס משקה אין נוטלים ממנו לידיים לא הזכיר כלי חרס but Rabbi didn't really mention, right, the issue of clay, just said כלי, right, אלא כלי יחתם יש להחמיר, so it's therefore should be stringent בכל הכלים, right, with all utensils, you know, שנקבו בכונס משקה, if there's a hole in there, right, to bring in the liquid, so we shouldn't use that, right? That plea, right? If it has some kind of a hole like that, you gotta retire it, right? You know, put it into retirement, right? Send it to Social Security. It's already too old. Get something new, right? So yeah, that's the story there. Okay, good. Let's see what else we got here. There's a little bit more. So it continues in the tour. So what does that mean that the water comes in, right? It means that if you place it on top of a liquid, right? You know, like let it float on top of it, the water will come in into the cup. Liquid, whatever, right? It'll come in. By way of the hole. As we said, right, it's larger than something that comes out of it. You know, that the Achi Tanan, and that's how we learned in the Mishnah, Perek Basiman, right, in the this Perek Nida Mimtet Amud Aleph, the Nakat, the Kones Mashke Gadol Minekev the Motzi Mashke, right? It says the same thing over there. That the one that brings in is larger than the one that lets it out. Katab Mari Kolon, says Mari Kolon, Beshorash Dunhei, the Kones Mashke U Nekev Rachab Kemo Adasha. Oh, look what he says, right? So he says, how large is that hole? So he says it's the size of a lentil. Wow. Interesting. There you go. Adasha Echad, one lentil. ונראה לי דווקא לעניין מקווה, כתב כן. So he says, I think he's talking about a mikveh. כדי לחוש למה שכתבו התוספות, to be concerned about what Tosfot says בפרק בסימן, in this perek, דהה דאמינן אי בזיה דבלה וכונס משקה מלאף ליפה, ומטבילין בו, האלה שהנקב גדול עד שהמים מקלחים עד כאן, אבל לפסול כלי לנטילת ידיים בכונס משקה, הווה ודאי שיעורה בציר מהכיתובה. Look what he says, right? So he says that only applies to, you know, the issue of mikveh, whatever, something over there. But he says regarding this issue, he says, Bet Yosef, he says it doesn't really have to be the size of a lentil. It could be much smaller and it'll still bring in some water, you know? So in other words, he's pushing out this theory here, right? He's putting it, setting it aside, putting it out to pasture, this theory here. It makes sense what he's saying, you know? I mean, lentil is quite large, you know? Even if it's half a lentil, you know, it's going to let water in. That's probably what it is, you know? Okay, very good. So what do we see from here, right? Make sure your cup is nice and solid, right? No holes. If it's got a hole, you have to get a new one. Right? Go to the store or order it online, right? Go to Eichler's, you know, and they'll send you a nice new cup. Okay. All right. I'm afraid to say Amazon, but I think they'll do it too.
I just got one.
I'm sorry.
I just got a cup that is it collapses, so I can take it to work, and it has the two handles, and it's a new innovation where it collapses. You can take it to work, and you don't have to worry about taking a big cup.
What do you eat there at work?
Yeah, I bring my lunch. Yes, so
you have a sandwich, like a sandwich.
Yes.
Okay, you need one. Okay, I got you.
I use the cup, a water bottle. And so
Okay.
I have to find something better than this. And I found a one that collapses. So it's
That's
pretty good.
interesting, right? Interesting. Collapsible, interesting. Okay, we're gonna probably talk about things like that, which are like, ad hoc kind of, utensils.
I thought that isn't there a thing that in a like I don't know if you don't have anything else you can even use like a bottle.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we said that at the beginning.
Okay.
You can use a bottle, disposable even, plastic bottle. No problem, It's just that I think she wants something more, like permanent, you know what I mean? Like something more, purposeful. You know,
Like for home.
no, for the job, because when you're using like a bottle or like a disposable cup, it's not something like permanent. It's like something which comes and goes. It's like but when you have something permanent, which is only for that purpose, it's more like it's a purpose. Yeah, just more. Because what happens is, cups and bottles, they come and go. You throw them out sometimes. You put them into recycle. There's all kinds of things that you're not always sure that you have one of those.
I'm sharing it on the chat room so they can
Oh, okay.
see it.
All right. Okay. All right. So let's go on. But I think we're going to talk about these things like this, that are collapsible. They have their own kind of rules, these things. So, we're probably going to touch on that later on. So we'll see what the story is with that. Okay. So anyway, is this like by the way, this where'd you order that? Where'd you get that?
Amazon.
Oh, Amazon. Okay. It's like a Jewish company that sells it?
It says Kosher Innovations.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it does say
All right.
Kosher Innovations.
All right, interesting. Okay, we'll get back to that, but we'll have to look at that maybe a little bit more. But anyway, right, let's go on. What time is it? Okay, we can do maybe one more, maybe. Let's see. Right, so yeah, I think we have to do a Shulchan Aruch, right? Right, so it says the Shulchan Aruch, "En notlim yadayim ela b'kli," right? You have to use a utensil, as we said. V'kol hakelim ksherim, all the kelim are kosher, right? Whatever they may be. Afilu kli gilalim, right? Even as we said, right, it's dung, right? So he explains over here, right? They take the dung of the cattle, right, and they make utensils with it. Sounds like fun, huh? Okay. I bet you they don't have that on Amazon. Okay. Anyway, so it says, right, ukliya banim. Also, you can use, right, stone, right, stone utensils, right, stoneware. Ukliya adama, right. Also, you can use clay, earthenware. But tzarich sheh machazik revit. It has to hold the revit, as we said, right? 3 ounces is the minimum. Ve'im nikah bekones mashke. So it says if it has a hole that brings in the water, that means if they place it on top of some liquid, right, it'll come into the cup. Right, so it says it's bigger than the mashkim shebatoch hakli yotzim bo, something that takes out, removes the water. As batel mitrot kli. So it says the reason why we can't use that is because now it's not called a kli anymore. Once it has this kind of a hole, it's not called a kli. Why? Because it can't hold it. It can't hold the contents. So therefore we don't wash hands with that. אפילו אם הוא מחזיק ריבית, and if it holds ריבית, מן הנקב ולמטה, it holds ריבית below below the hole, right? Let's say the hole is like in the middle of the cup. So it can hold the ריבית below the hole. It says, nevertheless, we shouldn't use that. Interesting. Okay, good. So there, I think there's a little bit more Bit Yosef here on this that we have to read. Let's get back to that for a second. Mhm. Right. Yeah, I think we're done. We did everything. Okay. So Bezat Hashem, we'll continue next time with Bet. I guess we'll stop here. So thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Chazak Baruch Laila Tov. We'll see you tomorrow.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Laila Tov.
Horoscope
Thank you.
Sunday. We'll see you Sunday.
Yes. Oh, right. Yes. Sunday. Yes. Yes. Sunday. Yes. Yes. Yes.